South Dakota, the Monday, December 5th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Smith.
Here.
Weinreich.
Here.
Gregg.
Here.
Commissioner Robish is absent. Mayor Harrington.
Here. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda tonight? See none, see none. Brian, you see none?
No, sir.
Okay. Need a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Need a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Weinrich. Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Okay, public forum. Public comments may be sent during the live meeting broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. The link is listed on the city's website at www.HuronSD.government. Click on Government and then City Commission. In order to use the YouTube chat feature, please create an account with your YouTube and Gmail or use your existing accounts. Please state your name and address for the public record, and the forum is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per person. Anything for public forum tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Matters appearing on the consent agenda are expected to be non-controversial and will be acted upon by the commission at one time without discussion unless a member of the commission requests an opportunity to address any given items. Items moved to a consent agenda will be discussed at the beginning of the formal items. Tonight's consent agenda consists of 4.1, minutes of the November 28, 2022 City Commission meeting. 4.2, fuel quotes for city departments. 4.3, raffles here in Elks Lodge at the Sportsman's Bar. And number 2, Lisa McCourthy's at the Campus Center. 4.4, set December 19th as a public hearing date to consider a special event on sale alcohol beverage license filed by James Valley Shrine Club for their annual indoor fishing event January 21st at the Campus Center. 4.5, special event on sale alcohol beverage license filed by the Hangar Restaurant for a Christmas party on January 6th at the Campus Center. 4.6, personnel items. Terminate seasonal golf employees. Number 2, recognize the following employees have completed their probationary period and are eligible for supplementary benefits. E911. Telecommunicator Tomlin Troy, firefighter Taylor Sorensen, and library technician Beverly Dunn. Number 3, credit police officer Brian Reff with 4 years of service for accruals. 4.7, payment of the bills. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent.
Commissioner Bragg moves to approve. A second on this item.
Second.
Commissioner Smith with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Okay, moving on to bid quotes. I'm going to call on our assistant city engineer to tell us what we got for this one.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This is just progress payment on the SPRs. Progress payment of $185,310. I recommend approval for the mayor to sign.
All right, thank you, Dennis.
Motion to approve 5.1.
Commissioner Weinrich, motion to approve. Need a second on this item.
Second.
Commissioner Bragg, a second on this item. Any discussion for Dennis Bennett on this item? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Okay, petitions and communications. I'm going to call on Barry, our city planner, to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time and place for the public hearing regarding the property exchange being proposed between the City of Huron and Lloyd and Jean Spain for Spain Outlots 3 and 4, which is owned by the city, and Spain Outlot 5, which is owned by Lloyd and Jean Spain. Number one, to consider the recommendation by the appraisal committee, which the appraisal committee, there's a memo in your packet for tonight from them regarding the proposed valuation of both lots. And then to authorize the mayor to sign the quitclaim deed and any other necessary documentation that would help facilitate the transfer of the properties.
I think we'll do two motions. The first motion will be to consider the recommendations by the appraisal committee. Do we have a motion to approve on that?
Move to approve the recommendations of the appraisal committee.
Commissioner Smith? and you-
Second.
Mr. Weinrich is second. Any discussion on that item? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Okay, now we're gonna move on to number 2, authorize the mayor to sign a quitclaim deed and any other necessary documentations. Need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Smith moves to approve. Need a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Bray. Any discussion on this item?
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
just for the record, was there any public input on this or comment?
No, there was not. We had no opposition voiced, and in fact, we had no comment regarding the transaction whatsoever.
Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Yes, Commissioner Weinrich.
Does Butch have anything else to add?
We'll get to that. We'll vote on this here, and then we'll ask him if he's got anything to add. So we need a motion?
We have a motion and a
Okay,
second.
we'll call vote then, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Now, Commissioner Weinrich, if you want to address Mr. Brett.
Did you have anything further you would like pertaining to that?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, I think we talked about this a month or so ago in regards to the cost of replanting and surveying. This was done originally, like you've already heard, 19 years ago. And I purchased the property thinking I owned all of the property, built my house there. Now, I want to sell part of my property off, which the county approved I could do that. So I had to get replatted. And come to find out that the city still owned part of the property, and I wanted to get replatted. So the cost was twice as much as it should have been because of the replatting of the mistake that was made back in, 19 years ago. So I'm just requesting to see if the city could somehow help bear some of the cost in that resurveying. The total cost was $3,800. Dividing that by the 3 plats that had to be done. One was for the city, for their piece of property, and 2 was for myself. One was for the piece of property that you guys just voted on, and the third one I'm holding for the final, so that I can sell the 2-acre property. So dividing that out by 3 is $1,266.68 per plat. So I guess I'm asking the city if they'd be willing to buy or help purchase one of the plats. I mean, they have one of the plats made out to the city. So each plat costs $1,266 from Pearson Harris. So that's my request, and to see if they'd be willing. If not, that's fine. I'll have to go ahead and take care of it. Any questions for me?
But yeah, Bush, 19 years ago, did you hire this guy, this Hognes, or whatever his name is? Who was
Yes.
the engineer?
Well, it was through my real estate person. He hired him, but it was through me, yes. I was living in Washington at the time when we did this.
Okay.
We bought the property and wanted to build out there.
So the one that did the initial plotting was hired by you, 19 years ago. The city didn't have anything to do with that.
Of what, hiring?
Hiring that guy, getting it platted, we didn't have anything to do with the city, right?
Well, the city had something to do, well, they didn't have anything to do with the hiring part of it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And we didn't have anything to do with the platting. This Hodges, whoever's name, did the platting.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
All we did, that when we got the, from my understanding, when the plat got done, it was brought to our planner. Our planner looked at it and said, okay, it's on the right street, it's done this way and done that way. We don't have a say whether it's right or wrong. We're not engineers. The engineer who has a stamp of an engineering, he's the guy that has the right or wrong. He says it's right or wrong. He said it was right, he proved it was right. He gave it to the city, said it's good. When we get a plat, we just make sure that if the streets are right and the directions are right, but we don't say
Okay.
whether the plat's right.
Okay, but did the city want to keep part of that property around there? On my property?
Well, let's get,
Me and the city-
I want to get this discussion of the money first, okay?
Well, no, I mean, but the city approved of selling that property,
Yeah.
knowing that I thought it was all the property. They thought it was all the property at the time, but it wasn't.
Okay. The city is no advantage to the city whether we keep it or don't. The advantage is to you because you're gonna sell the property. Am I wrong on that?
Well, the advantage to the city, I see as you own the lake. Right now, the part that I'm selling to the city is part of the lake.
Yeah, it's
So I would
underwater.
still own part of that, yeah.
Yeah, it's
it's part of the
underwater.
water.
We're buying land underwater, or we're getting land underwater.
But I could own that water. I mean, I own that water now. I could put a sign up saying private property. You know, I wouldn't want to do that,
Maybe you could do it.
yeah.
And I don't think that, I mean, that's kind of immaterial, because you can't really own, once the public water goes over it, it's kind of immaterial, so I think what's more at concern, we, as a precedent, the city could not be responsible for every plat that was brought to us to verify it, otherwise we would have to charge the fee to be the engineer. So in general, I think the point the mayor and I think the finance officer made it a few weeks ago is, we can't be liable for every plat that's brought to us, otherwise potentially any mistakes that were made, we'd have to pay for all of those. I do think, Mr. Mayor, that one comment I would have on this one is, unlike the precedent that would set for all projects, this is a project where the city was one of the parties. And so since we initially, 19 years ago, were the seller of the property, we're maybe more involved than we would be in a scenario where we were just overseeing an exchange of land between two private parties. So I would say that would be the only reason I would see any reason to support what he's asking for, is not that in general the city should be liable for what's brought to us, because we don't have the ability. We have to hire a professional the same way as what you did. But because we were a party to this sale, whether or not we want to accept a different responsibility there, as opposed to any transaction between other property owners.
I'd be concerned with precedent, though. I would be concerned with precedent. Who's to say that there isn't others out there that this Mr., whatever his name was, Hoskins did? All of a sudden they go, hey, let's check ours. Woo, let's step it up and get some money back. That concerns me. Also, that Randy Hoshide, you hired Randy Hoshide to do,
Yes, correct,
okay, we didn't have anything to do with that. City didn't have anything to do with that either.
right.
But had this not been an issue, your bill would have been substantially
Right.
less.
It would have been $1,266 instead of $3,800. Because they had to do 3 plats in order to exchange the 2 plats. And then the final plat, when I go to sell that other property.
And to your point of precedent, Mayor, I guess I would say, so anybody that this same individual hired, it would also have to be a property that the city was one of the parties involved. And in general, the city doesn't buy and sell a lot of land. So I don't disagree with you that this does potentially open us up to a precedent, but it'd be pretty limited scope, where land being sold by the city was improperly platted, that we would bear some cost of the replatting because of the mistake that was made.
Well,
I think it's pretty limited
what
scope.
would the advantage to the city be?
just bearing some responsibility that we, as one of the parties to the sale, were a part of a mistake that was made.
19 years ago.
Correct.
See, I have a problem spending taxpayers' dollars for some land underwater. That's my problem too, because I know I'm going to get hit.
Even though he made that point, it has nothing to do with the land. We're not purchasing the land, or it's simply a matter of,
We're cleaning it up so he can sell that land.
yeah, we were a party to a sale that a mistake was made on, and now those legal descriptions had to be made right. Whether it's underwater or the middle of town or wherever it is, the fact of the matter is, we were a party to a transaction that was recorded incorrectly. And I'm saying, I think he's got a valid point that we, as a party to that transaction that was handled incorrectly, could bear some small part of the cost.
Yeah.
There's no advantage to the taxpayers, I agree with that.
No.
But this is a transaction that we entered into. We were one part of the sale, and that was handled incorrectly.
Did we gain anything from the sale way back 19 years ago?
I assume we probably got paid for the
Do you
land.
remember
Yes,
what?
yes, you paid for the land.
Yeah.
And we still retain ownership of the land in this transfer. It's underwater.
But my question still is, if the city owns all of Lake Ravine, don't they want to own that part of it as well? It's not that important to the city? I mean, because,
We haven't had it for over 20 years, so.
Okay.
I just want to make
Had
a
to be
clarification here. We've already made a motion and approved those transactions. So we've done that part.
Okay.
So we're just referring to the compensation.
okay,
That's why I wanted to do it separately.
Yeah, so we've already discussed the land,
Yeah,
that's
that's
already
been
been approved, so.
Yeah.
And again, I would want to be real clear that in general, I would not want to set any precedent that any transaction that was brought before the city, we have to somehow go through and verify all private party transfers. That is still that's the responsibility of the buyer and the seller and whatever agent they hire to properly plat it. The only suggestion I'm making is that in this one case, as being the initial seller, do we include ourselves in some of the responsibility to get it cleaned up? Because, again, to me, it's immaterial where the land is or what it is. It's more about, we have to do a transaction to get this cleaned up, because right now it's wrong. It's been fine for 20 years, but it's wrong, so we're trying to fix it. He's saying he's willing to pay 2/3 of the price. I don't think it's out of line for us to pay 1/3 as one of the parties to the transaction.
Okay. Any more questions on this? I know, I don't agree with that, and I'll vote against it. I don't know if we should be spending taxpayers' dollars for something that was a mistake 20 years ago that we had nothing to do with, nothing.
I agree with everything. We did have something to do with it, because we were one of the
We
parties
didn't
to the
pay the money
transaction.
for it back then. We didn't pay the money for this individual to go out and do it wrong. We were involved in his transaction. You were involved in that transaction with this engineer back 19 years ago. You got him, paid him. We had nothing to do with that.
well, I was also involved with the city trying to buy the property.
You didn't know it 19 years ago that he'd made a mistake. Now, 19 years later, you
No.
come and say he made a mistake, you guys should pay.
How many of us have read that fine print on the property legals? You know, there was no financing of it done at the time. It was a cash deal. So I didn't read the legal thing on the transaction. I didn't know it until I go to resell it,
Yes,
you know?
Any other
And the
questions?
city didn't know it then either.
Any other questions on this item before we vote on this? Because we're gonna have to vote if we're gonna spend money. And that's the other question I've got, where's the money coming from? Is it coming out of your budget? Is it coming out of your budget?
We would come from reserves.
Come from reserves, so we'll spend reserves to get this thing.
So I would make a motion that we reimburse him for 1/3 of the platting costs because of the mistake that was made 19 years ago, of which we were a party to the transaction.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner.
I would just note for clarification, this is a bit beyond the scope of the agenda. The agenda item has already been approved. Whether or not reimbursement should be made was not a part of this agenda. You did indulge the conversation, but this is not formally a part of the agenda.
So you suggest we put it on the agenda for next week to,
I would.
valid point.
So could we get like a formal request?
It was a formal request a month ago.
Something in
You
writing?
tabled it that time.
Just something in writing to me that shows the copies of the bills and that?
Yes.
Perfect.
Would you like to have it?
It's just a copy.
So based on that, Dr., your point of order on it would be to have this as an agenda item for next week for formal action,
I would. Yes. Correct.
for public notification, under the public notification requirements.
Yeah, it would be on the agenda, published ahead of the meeting.
That's fair. That's fair. So we have a motion and a second?
Rescind those.
Just rescind on that. Okay. All right, good enough. We don't have anything else on the agenda. We got an executive session tonight to deal with negotiations, SDCL 1-25-